Hello, my friends. I hope you've had a wonderful Valentine's weekend or whenever you're listening. Either way, I am here to give you so many great tips with our guest, Dr. Sheila Rae Gregoire. We have enjoyed her on the podcast so much. I think I'm more excited than ever to talk to you about her new research, her book, The Marriage You Want. This is one of those must listen or must watch episodes. I don't say that all the time. I'm always excited about, of course, whatever I'm putting out. But this is one of those like, okay, if you only get a chance to listen to 5 or 10 Enneagram and marriage episodes, this is one of them because Sheila spells out the essentials. And sometimes we need to get nuanced with the one-to-one or the social or the self-pres subtypes, or sometimes we need to get really nuanced with each type. But here we're really diving into what all of us desperately need and the things that will help to shore us up if we're feeling off kilter. And again, we just had Valentine's weekend for those who are listening live. And some of you very well might be like, girl, I need help today. I am not having that day where I'm loving my partner just as they are. I'm thinking of that song by Billy Joel, Just As You Are, because I can literally hear Jack playing it downstairs. I asked him to possibly learn that one because I love that song, of course, authenticity user. But he is playing it, I'm hearing it, and yet I know, guys, I'm an idealist, but the stars do not always align. And you might very well be coming into this episode where you're like, I am so burning mad at my spouse right now. Krista, you have no idea. Or I'm just frustrated in general, or more than likely tired because you're doing a lot. So I want you to get your coffee or tea, come back to me if I've lost you already because you're so tired. And we are diving into something absolutely beautiful here with Sheila. Her research is gold, and just even the reminders of what she's going to share about sharing leadership and making sure that we are connecting in certain ways. You're going to just love it. So I can't wait for you to tune in. Don't forget also right now, if you're just like, Krista, I actually need some one-to-one time with you, we have our Enneagram and Marriage new intensive. It's called the Enneagram Relationship Intensive, and I'm walking couples, a very small group of couples, through 6 weeks. You can join it as an individual or as a couple, using it in your relationship or your marriage, and allow yourself to deepen a journey's walk together. Some of you are like, we're good on the basic level. We don't have that intimacy. Others of you are like, our intimacy is actually poor, sexual and otherwise. This is a deeper dive time. That's why it's a small group. So excited to begin that February 25th. I hope you could join. That's in the show notes too. Either way, let's make sure we talk to Sheila now about her wonderful marriage tips for all of us. Sheila, thank you so much for joining us again on the Enneagram and Marriage Pod. We're thrilled to have you back.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Oh my gosh, we were just laughing before we got on because Sheila is seeing her book for one of the first times.
Yes.
Woohoo!
Yeah, the publisher hasn't sent me one yet. So all of these people have been sent early copies. It's like, oh, I'm jealous.
It is gorgeous, as you guys probably know by now, but if you're watching on our YouTube, you can see it. Sheila, you've
hmm
put so much work, your whole family has put so much beautiful work into helping us to
hmm
have the marriages we want. So thank you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Just for those listeners, I saw on Spotify that we
Yeah.
had a lot of newer listeners this year, so they'd love to hear a little bit about you and Keith.
Sure. Well, so I have been writing in the marriage space since around 2008, and I used to write mostly about sex. This is our foray into more general marriage.
Yeah.
But what we've been doing for the last 5 years is huge research projects to see if there are certain teachings, especially in evangelical church circles, but really in the society at large, that are negatively impacting, especially women's marital and sexual satisfaction, and how we can get away from that and teach something that's actually healthy. And so this new book is also based on another study, this time of 7,000 people. We had 1,300 matched pairs, which is so cool because we could see, like, if the husband said this, how does that affect the wife?
Yeah.
And then another 5,000 individuals. So yeah, really fun.
That's amazing. Frothing at the mouth over here over your amazing
Yes.
research that gives us data points
Mhm.
that, guys, for those of you who don't like nerding out,
Mhm.
deliver practical insights to you. So
Yes.
this is why
Yes.
we're
So many charts and graphs in the book. Yes.
Yes, but it matters. And thank you for
hmm
being part of all of these levels, introducing yourself, people who are just dying to know more about your research on sex and Christianity. Oh my gosh, you guys have so much ahead of you to learn. And I'm so grateful for all your books books. So make sure you guys are already
Mhm.
looking in the notes. But coming back to all of us now here, Sheila,
Mhm.
you talk about in the new book about how you see God, you, your husband Keith, in a triangle relationship of partnership, of teamship with God at the head. Tell us more about that and how that developed and has shifted over the years for you to really understand.
Yeah, so when we got married, our pastor was doing premarital counseling and he drew this triangle, three dots, and with God at the top and Keith and me on our different little angles at the bottom. And he said, the closer that you move to God, the closer you move to each other.
Mm.
And that's true. Like, that's absolutely true. Um, but it doesn't necessarily follow
Yeah.
that the triangle is going to be easy or that it's always going to work.
Mm.
And, there's been different times in our marriage where it hasn't been like that.
Yeah.
Because if one person is growing closer to God and one person is running away from God, you're actually going to be growing further from each other.
Mm.
So you need both of you to be showing up in everything you are. And then
Mm.
there's times in your marriage where, you stop speaking up.
Yeah.
You think, well, my spouse is busy. They can't handle me right now. Like this isn't that big a deal. I'll just live with it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the triangle becomes entirely about the other person. And I
Mm.
know that was the case for us when Keith was in medical residency. Like he was so exhausted and he was so
Yeah.
busy
Mm-hmm.
that you sort of feel like, well, he can't handle what I'm feeling right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you end up retreating into yourself. And even if you go to God, even if you say, God, I need help, so I need compassion, so I'm going to get that from God, when you're not getting it from your spouse, when your spouse doesn't really know who you are, you're gonna grow further away from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what the triangle tells me is that all of us matter. All of us need to matter. So you need to show up with everything you are. You need to make space for your spouse to show up with everything they are.
Mm.
And unless you're all doing that, marriage is not going to work that well.
Wow. I love how you also name there implicitly that you are not the same as your partner and that it's
Mhm.
not just that one size fits all that we're talking about here. Is that what
Yeah.
your research showed us too?
Absolutely. And we were looking specifically at gender. Of course, you look at the Enneagram, which is another great way to look at it. But what we found, and I think this really fits with the Enneagram, is that when couples say my opinions matter as much as my spouse's, or when we're in a disagreement, even if my spouse doesn't agree, they're able to voice my opinions. Like they can mirror them back to me, and they don't critique me for that. Like they respect my opinions. Marriages do so much better. So when we understand each other and we value those differences, even if we don't agree, our marriage is going to do better,
Yeah.
which is kind of like,
Mm.
duh, like we all know that, right? But
Yeah. Yeah.
but the problem is that often we don't act it out.
Mm.
We really don't.
Mhm.
And we also think, well, my spouse is supposed to look a certain way, and I'm supposed to look a certain way. We're told even something simple like, well, women are emotional and men are rational.
Mm.
Right? Like that we're just told that all the time. Women are emotional, men are rational. Women just want to talk, men don't want to talk. They're always going to run away if you try to have a conversation. Well, that's what you call a gender stereotype. And a
Mhm.
lot of times in our marriages, we're trying to live up to these gender stereotypes because we think that's what we're supposed to be. So she's supposed to be this great house cleaner, and he's supposed to make all of this money, or however it plays out in your marriage, and you end up running away from who you really are.
Oh my gosh, said so well. That's something we still run into, I think, as men
Hmm.
and women. I just ran into that yesterday with a client and found myself really having to dig in to some of the things you talk about in your book. Like, even if women have more socialization around this, that
Yeah.
men have just as much capacity for emotional regulation. And I've also heard Wes
Yes.
talk about it because he likes things to be cookie cutter. And he's like, this is what you're supposed to do, this is what I'm supposed to do. And to give
Hmm.
him the permission and all men the permission to dig into emotions is such a gift. Thank you.
Yeah.
And tell us if there's even words you could put to it is what drove this passion for you all those years ago when you started this? Because we've just loved all your beautiful work here.
Well, when we were first married, because I'm the woman and women are more likely to read self-help books, but I read a lot of the Christian marriage books that were out there in the early 1990s, and they really ended up hurting me.
Yeah.
They just presented a view of sex, especially, which was very obligation based.
Mhm.
Women, your husband needs it, or he's going to lust or have an affair or stray or explode or whatever.
Mhm.
And so you need to give it to him. And it really took away my autonomy. And that had some long lasting consequences, which I
Mm.
didn't understand at the time and I couldn't put words to at the time.
Yeah.
Um, but I kept seeing this happen to my friends around me where they had read books that said things like, men need respect and women need love, as if women don't need respect, which is
Mm.
untrue.
Yeah.
And then they try to live this out and their marriages get worse. Or, women, he needs to be the head, he needs to be an authority over you. And so it's disrespectful to speak up about what you're feeling about the marriage because he needs to be the leader.
Mm.
Well, when you do that enough times, your marriage is awful
Yeah.
because you're not showing up in who you are. How can you be intimate with someone who doesn't truly know you? And
Yes.
I was seeing the effects of this in my friends, in my Bible studies, in my own marriage. And in 2020, we really took a turn in our work because we started to analyze some of the Christian books that were out there. And
Mm.
we realized, I think this is harmful. But it's not enough to think it's harmful. We wanted to actually measure it so that we could say for sure. And
Mm.
yeah, we found that when you don't show up in your marriage because someone else is in authority over you, bad things happen. When your opinions don't count, bad things happen.
Mm, wow. So making that assumption that God is at the top of that triangle, the husband is next, and the woman is sort of the base. It's like
Hmm.
that view actually harms people who think, oh my gosh, this evangelical view that it's God and
Hmm.
then the man makes the decision and then the woman is somewhere as an afterthought. Or a consideration, but not the higher with God
Yeah.
and the husband in the equilateral triangle with God at the top is it
Hmm.
seems like that view has shown through your research that it's not true. It's the opposite. Is that right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
when women, yeah, tell us more about that.
Yeah, teamwork works best, overwhelmingly. When men and women just mutually submit to one another and then run after Jesus together, the marriages tend to do well.
Mm.
But you
Love
put
that.
one in authority over the other and it doesn't work. We like to explain it like this. Okay, so when you're looking at the results of our survey, there's a lot of good outcomes that people want in their marriage, right? We
Yeah.
have shared hobbies. I
Mm.
feel like my spouse knows my heart. When I'm upset, I can go to my spouse for comfort. My sexual desire is high. I frequently orgasm. All of these things are good, right? This is what we want in marriage. We want to feel like we're known. We want to feel like we have a partner. I feel like my partner does their fair share of housework. Like we want all of these things. Well, good things tend to travel together. Okay,
Mm.
so picture two groups of people that are going on a hike. Okay, so they show up at the base of the mountain and they each go in separate directions. And one group is wearing the purple t-shirts and one group is wearing the green t-shirts. And your purple t-shirts are all of the good outcomes that we're looking for, all of the things that you want in your marriage, to feel known, to enjoy being together, all of those things. They all flow together. And some of them go really, really closely together. It's like they're holding hands while they're walking on the hike, right?
Yeah.
And some of them kind of far behind there. They're the straggler who's looking at in their binoculars up at a bird. So they're not rushing as far ahead as you are, but they're still going in the same direction and they're going to catch up. So things move in the same direction, even if like some move a lot and some move a little bit, but they're still going in that direction, right? So for instance, if you look at people who say, my opinions matter just as much as my husband's in marriage, if you look at those people, they're also going to say, my spouse, they're way more likely to say, my spouse really values my opinion during an argument or can talk about my opinion during an argument and doesn't criticize me. So they're way more likely to say that. And they're like also a little bit more likely to say, my sexual desire level is high, right? So some things travel more closely and some things travel more further apart, but they still go in the same direction. All right. Now,
Yeah.
here's what I want you to understand.
Yeah.
In that pile of good things is the concept of teamwork, where
Mm.
we are in this together and we're both showing up.
Mhm.
In the hiking group, that's all the bad stuff. So you don't have shared hobbies, you don't value your opinions, all of that. That's where hierarchy ends up. That's where this idea that he is over her, that he is an authority over her, that he needs respect in a way that she will never understand. That's where that shows up. And so people who say, well, he's just doing hierarchy wrong. No, no, no. It's in the bad group.
Yeah.
Just, it is in the bad group. It is absolutely indisputable that
Yeah.
teamwork works best. And most people function as a team, and they do really well when they do that.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you're saying don't be an outlier, somebody who's
Yeah.
believing that women don't need respect and that men don't need love. It's like, I love how you're also sharing again with men that they need love too, not just respect. And women don't just need
Hmm.
love, they also need respect. Thank you for just
Yeah.
clarifying that. You've also
Yeah.
had some
It's in
biblical
it.
scholars on to talk about that with you to even get into the Greek, which I've loved
Hmm.
hearing.
Yes, and this is what I want people to hear too. For those of you who are more from a Christian tradition, the idea that men are in authority over women, that is one interpretation of the Bible. It is not the only one, and it is not the best one that is most faithful to the Greek. And Jesus told us,
Oh, you froze right there when you
so he said,
oh,
a bad,
okay, sorry, you froze when you said, and Jesus told us, but go ahead.
oh, I'll do it again. And Jesus told us when you have two different interpretations, how do you figure out which one is right? You look at the fruit. Because he
Mm,
said a bad tree can't bear bad fruit, and a good tree can't bear good fruit. Or sorry,
mm,
I did it the wrong way.
yeah.
A bad tree can't bear good fruit, and a good tree can't bear bad fruit. And so when we're seeing bad fruit, you know that the tree is bad.
Mm.
So, so we need to just get to what is good fruit. And that's what we're trying to do in this book. What is related to good, healthy marriages.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you for clarifying that and also just letting people have expansive thinking around scripture interpretations that when I got to hear the scholar on your podcast, she talked about how, it's love your wives so that she'll respect you. Like it
Yes.
isn't like, oh, she's only to respect you and you're only to love her. That would be such a limiting statement. Instead, I
Hmm.
love how you expand on that. Like we need both. And thank you for just
Hmm.
giving that additional reminder about Jesus saying, like, if it produces bad fruit in your marriage, don't do that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, tell us about the unfairness threshold and how it shows up differently in marriage.
Okay, so this is really cool. This is one of the most fun findings that we had, I think. It's depressing, but it's super cool. Basically, people can put up with stuff being unfair for a couple of years. It doesn't even really bother them in the first couple of years necessarily, not that much. But when something is seriously unfair, by about the 15-year mark, you're really seeing the repercussions of it. And
Mhm.
that can't keep happening. By 20, 25 years, you're done. You're absolutely done. And
Mm,
so my challenge to people is in those first few years of marriage, if something's really unfair, do something about it now because it may not bother you yet, but it will. And
mm,
if something cannot be sustained long term, it is better to address it early, even if you feel like, no, I can keep doing this for a while. Address it now because it's not going to work long term. I'm going to give you some examples. We'll give one first from sex.
okay.
So, women who don't reach orgasm during sex, okay, in the first few years of their marriage, they still say, yeah, I like sex. But by 15 years, they're like, I never want to have it. I'm done.
Mhm.
So, if you're not reaching orgasm, don't keep having sex, okay? Don't keep doing the same thing. Say, no, we are going to stop and figure out how my body works. We
Mm,
are going to stop and, doing the thing where you're enjoying yourself and I'm not. We're going to go back to first principles and we're going to figure this out
mm,
because sex that is not good for her is not sustainable in the long run. Here's another one. What happens if she does more than 75% of the housework? Okay, so she's doing it, whether or not, and this was true whether or not she worked outside the home, which was super interesting. Even
mm,
stay-at-home moms
mhm,
cannot do all of the housework indefinitely. So if she's doing over 75% of the housework, and you say, "Hey, does your spouse do their fair share?" Okay. At year one, 75% of women still say, yeah, he does.
mm,
But by year 20, you're looking at something very different.
mm,
And it's like you cannot put up with that forever. We saw it in terms of, who is the first one to make repair when there's something wrong in your marriage. If one person tends to be the one who every time there's a conflict, they're the one who bridges the gap, you can't do that. long term either. Like your marital satisfaction is going to just plummet.
Oh my
And
God.
so, whenever there is too much responsibility for something put on one person, you
Mhm.
can put up with that for a couple of years. You cannot put up with it for 20.
Oh my gosh, that's interesting. Wow. I am so glad you guys researched that. I'm going to be sharing that with my couples here. Everybody, listen hard to that.
Yeah.
Rewind if you need to, because
Hmm.
that is phenomenal information for us all, especially you newlyweders out there. And then for those of you who are just, no, we're in the thick of it. It wasn't working. It didn't work. This is your time to strategize. I also want to ask, one of my biggest questions, in fact, we're doing an episode about it this week, but it's, when do people make the time for conflict? I am in the stages with
Hmm.
teenagers. I know it's in the coming. I heard your daughter talk about hockey practice with you on your podcast. Like, what do you say to people who are like, we're busy, we're tired, we want positivity, and we're just so tempted to be like, I don't want to talk about it. There's never a good
Hmm.
time.
Yeah. Um, I think that there's a myth that quality time and quantity time are something different.
Hmm.
Quality time is quantity time because
Hmm.
it's very, very hard to have difficult conversations if you're not also having really light conversations. You
Hmm.
know, we need those times to bring the tension level down, to just laugh together, to just chat. We
Yeah.
need those low key times if we're going to be able to have some of these deeper conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I know you're busy, but one of the easiest ways to have those low key conversations is to do the rhythms of your day together as much as
Mhm.
possible. So
Yeah.
do the dishes together. Go for a walk after dinner, go to bed together. We were flabbergasted at how important it was to go to bed together.
Oh,
What a
this is,
huge impact that made on marriage.
oh, and dinner
Um,
together, which I saw.
Yes, yes. Like all of these things, just do as much as you can together because
Hmm.
it gives you natural times to just chat. And
Hmm.
then those harder conversations, they come more naturally too. Now, if your marriage is seriously in the toilet,
Yeah.
then yes, you may have to schedule time to have a super serious conversation. You know, if you need to confront your spouse about some major sin, some major problem, they're chronically watching porn, they're gambling, they've outspent on the credit cards, that's something different. But if it's just, I am just not happy right now,
Yeah.
that is something that is much easier to talk about if you are also spending some low key time
Mhm.
together. So, as much as you can, I'm not saying you have to do a date night. That's too
Yeah.
expensive. No one has the time for that. But try as much as you can to do the rhythms of life together.
Aw. I love that you invited people that, because I love my date nights. I always have since the beginning of my marriage, but I am an idealist. Wes and I are both
Hmm.
in the idealist triad, 1, 4, and 7. And so we're always shooting for that. And sometimes we can miss the grounded, practical tips of what you're sharing. So that just
Hmm.
makes me happy for those couples who are like, we don't do date nights. Are we okay? And then
Yeah.
also for the ones who are more doing the date nights and the romanticizing, to be like, get in there for the groundwork and spend more time together.
Hmm.
And I have
Hmm.
seen it to where we have had to fight over these years in a good way for our marriage to have time. So I appreciate you telling everyone that, even in the busy years, fight for your time together and
Yeah.
your self-care
Hmm.
time and your family time, even if you can't eat together every night because of hockey or soccer, some of the nights.
Yeah.
Go to bed if you can't all the nights, some of the nights. And these are, sounds like, huge factors in couple satisfaction over the years, generally, right?
Hmm. Yeah, like the going to bed together, that one shocked me how big I knew it would make a difference, but it was huge. It's like a 30-point difference in marital satisfaction. If you never go to bed together versus if you go to bed together every night out of
Oh,
100. So 30 points is pretty darn significant. Um, and obviously sometimes people can't go to bed together. You've got shift work, you've got just different schedules that don't work. And we're not saying this is a necessary thing. Like if you have good reasons why you can't, that's okay.
right.
But think about what are the benefits of going to bed together and then how can you work those in other ways. And the benefits simply are you have that low key time to talk.
Yeah.
You're kind of decompressing at the end of the day.
Hmm.
You're checking in with each other last thing. You
Hmm.
have more time to have sex because a lot of times sex
Yeah.
isn't planned. It's not even on your radar screen.
Right.
You're not really thinking about it. But then you get in bed, you start chatting, and then something happens. So, how can you make the spontaneous things happen in other ways if you can't go to bed together?
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is so good. And I did not know that research. I haven't yet finished your book. And so seeing the dinner table and hearing you talk about it and now hearing this, it's fascinating because lately in marriage therapy circles, everyone's talking about you don't have to go to bed together because there was a shame over you do. And so while I don't want couples to feel that shame, at least in my own marriage, I've noticed our satisfaction really goes down if we
Hmm.
don't at least go to bed some of the times a week. I'm the one who's more likely to squirrel in late night type 7, be like, I have tons of energy. I'm not ready for bed. But
Yeah.
I know that as a marriage helper. So I get in that bed and I
Hmm.
am there because I want connection with my husband. I don't want to just go with every women fancy I have of research. I could be up all night every night. So I'm just
Yeah.
encouraging those people like me who don't always want to do that, that sometimes you can and you will miss if you
Hmm.
think you can bypass emotional connection and all this. Sheila and I are just both
Hmm.
agreeing you can't. This is the heart of marriage where real connection happens. So thank you
Yeah.
for this amazing research.
Yeah,
Wow.
and even if you don't go to sleep at the same time, you can go to bed together. Like
Yeah.
you can get ready
Yeah.
for bed, you can brush your teeth, you can get into your pajamas, you can lie in bed and chat, maybe read a book for 15 minutes, and then maybe your spouse is going to go to sleep, but you're going to get back up and
Yeah.
go back down to the
I
living room,
do that sometimes too.
but you're still going to bed together, and that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
I love that. That's a great idea for those who are the Energizer Bunny, but you still get your connection time.
Hmm. Hmm.
So tell me about when you talk about research around this goes with the bigger picture of just life. We all have seasons, griefs, things that we're processing. I saw some fascinating research you guys are doing around the areas of grieving with those who grieve, mourning with those who mourn.
Hmm.
Tell me more about what that has to do with our relational support and the ways we find that we can uplift after hard times.
Yeah, so this is kind of interesting. So, people who are able to grieve with their spouse. Okay. Even if they can't, even if they don't have anyone else to grieve with, they're going to do better than if you can't grieve with your spouse. So if you have like lots of other people to grieve with, I can call my mom, I can call my sister, I can call my best friend. That's great, but not my spouse. Your marital satisfaction is not going to be very good.
Mm.
But only being able to grieve with your spouse is also not correlated with great marital satisfaction. Basically, if you can grieve with your spouse, so if something bad happens and you can lean on your spouse, but you also have other people, that is the best for marital satisfaction. So we really do live in a village. We
Yeah.
need a village. Even your marriage needs a village. Like the happiest people, the people who have the greatest marital satisfaction are those who have a spouse they can grieve with, but also have a lot of other people.
Mm, yeah, which really shows us the social when we talk a lot here on the
Hmm.
podcast about the social instinct. I'm really big into instincts, the self-pres, the sexual and the
Hmm.
social. Um, that's a beautiful reminder to everybody out there who may be a bit more introverted or like I like my one-to-ones, which I can definitely do over the years when I used to be super, super social and then I had to backtrack to save
Hmm.
energy. I'm really happy you're saying please don't leave behind your community, even if you have to
Hmm.
backtrack a little bit, because those
Yeah.
couples who are doing the best really find that they can have many people to talk to about their successes, hard times, both. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. And it doesn't need to be like 10 or 20, it could be like three or four, but that you have those people in your
Mhm.
back pocket that are always there and that
Mhm.
you are that for other people too. That's what really matters.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I do need about 10 because we have a lot of extended family issues. So
Yes.
I
Well, there you go.
yeah, I do. I have about a good 10, but like you
Hmm.
said, I am there for those
Hmm.
10.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important that you nailed that to say be
Hmm.
there for people too, so that it can be a continual flow and as needed, you're not exhausting or wearing out the one or two.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yay on that research. Well, before we hit our lightning round, I just want to give a big overview of what does relationship flourishing look like when both partners are truly empowered in that teamship? Because I just
Hmm.
think that you've already laid out that these positive things land together. So we would love to just hear a grouping so people who are taking notes can write them down. Before we do that, before I forget, I just want to say everybody who was kind of going, she said good sex was important. Don't forget, Sheila has already written amazing books on that: The Great
Yes.
Sex Rescue, The Good Guy, and The Good Girl's Guide to Great Sex. Or you can talk
Hmm.
about those as well within this if you'd
Yes.
like.
Yeah, I would say that flourishing comes down to this. Okay. And it can be summed up in something Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm.
That's the key. And that means there's two people that you need to love. you need to love your neighbor and you need to love yourself because you can't love your neighbor as yourself if you don't love yourself. So
Mm.
both of you matter in marriage. And whenever anything gets off kilter,
Mhm.
then marriage is going to suffer. And so just make sure things don't get off kilter. When we try to think of, okay, what are the two big areas that marriages fail? What are the two big conflicts that people have?
Mm.
Well, we're always told is that it's sex and money, right? Like sex and money are the two big marriage killers. There is something that is way, 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 way worse that people don't tend to talk about. Okay, so when we look out of 100, marital satisfaction, we scored out of 100. When you go from having sex several times a week to having sex once a month, your
Mhm.
marital satisfaction falls by 10 points. So that's significant. Okay, 10 points tends to be significant. If you have money problems, it falls by 5 points. But if you go from doing half the housework to doing all of the housework, it falls by 31 points.
Wow.
Okay. Housework and mental load are the biggest marriage killers when they are out of kilter.
Mm.
And what we found is that in roughly half of marriages, people are pretty much doing this well. Okay, like both partners are showing up. And
Mm.
it's not always the wife, by the way, who does all the houseworks. It could be the husband. It's just more likely to be the
Yeah.
wife.
Thank you.
But whoever it is who is doing it all, their marriage is falling by 31 points, whether it's him or her. But
Mm.
so in about half of marriages, they're doing well. But in the other half, they're really not. And it tends to be that the woman is doing all of it. And it's not just housework. When we look at extended family, who takes care of the mother-in-law's birthday? Who
Mm.
takes care of, the anniversary for the mother-in-law? In about half of couples, they both take care of their own extended families. In the other half, she takes care of both. There's very few where he takes care of both. Or what about mental or medical and dental appointments? In about half of families, they each book their own appointments. In the other half, she books them for both. It's very rare that he books them for both. So in about half of people, half of couples, they're doing this really well. They're doing this teamwork thing. But in the other half, a lot is falling on her. And this isn't sustainable in the long term. And that is true whether or not she is working outside the home.
Mm.
And that isn't sustainable in the long term. And so I think that couples need to get more serious about that, about looking at the inequities in the marriage. And then the other thing, and you alluded to this earlier, is we need to get more serious about getting in touch with how we can communicate on an emotional level. And that is super hard for a lot of people because they were never taught emotional language. They don't know how to talk about what they're feeling. And we
Mm.
have a lot of really, really quick practical exercises you can do in the book to how to learn to get more comfortable with emotional language. But if you can't express what you're feeling, your spouse can't truly know you.
Mm.
And if you're not a safe enough person for your spouse to express what they're feeling, you can't really know your spouse.
Mm. Mhm.
And so we have to learn to be comfortable with emotional language. Otherwise, marriage isn't really a marriage, it's just a roommate experience.
Mm.
Maybe roommates with benefits, but that's all it is. It's not a marriage.
Yeah.
So, how can we build intimacy? We can build fairness, first of all, and then we can learn to be more emotionally open with each other.
Wow, that was beautifully recapped. And you gave us steps and tips for how to do that in general with time by not being afraid to prioritize each other, just the everyday moments. But you're also saying that for those couples who are like, I'm still wondering, how do I help my partner to access emotions? And I love how you shared it's not always the male versus the female, but usually is. But in my
Mhm.
marriage, sometimes it's me who doesn't. I think that I'm encouraged to hear because sometimes I don't want to have couples to have to read a whole book on just that. And your book has
Yeah.
so many other things that it
hmm
encompasses all this research we've talked about, as well as emotional tips. And do you have sexual tips in this book as well, or would you recommend one of
We
your
do.
others?
Oh my gosh, that was the worst chapter to write. Do you know how hard it is to write a chapter on sex when you've written 4 books on sex? It's like,
Yeah,
how do I
yeah, I
condense
know.
this into one chapter?
Yeah. Oh,
But we managed to do it.
oh,
Mutual, intimate, pleasurable for both. Those are the 3 keys for great sex. But yes, so that everything that I believe about sex is distilled into that one chapter in The Marriage You Want. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, guys, you have to literally get this book because now you're hearing it's literally got everything in it. So that makes me
Mhm.
very happy. And I know you worked hard to be as specific as possible. And that helps those who are just like our Enneagram ones out there who are like, I don't have time to read book. Give me the summary. So yes,
Yes.
you will love that, guys. Also, let's do our little lightning round so people can get to know a little bit about you, and then we'll share where they can find everything. But it's kind of on teamship. So just thinking of you and Keith, just fun little
Hmm.
6 questions or so. For morning routine, do you like to divide and conquer or tackle together?
Oh, we probably divide and conquer.
Yes. Okay, good. And I, there we go. You're dividing, you're sharing. Okay.
But we tend to be in the same room, but we're
Oh,
doing different things.
oh,
Yes.
that's good. I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Decision making together, quick calls or deep discussion?
A deep discussion.
Okay, good. Date night, planned ahead or spontaneous?
Planned ahead. But we
Okay.
don't do them enough, but we're
Yeah.
trying to get better and we're trying to take turns planning. So that's kind of fun. Yeah, the last one I was supposed to plan didn't happen because we ended up babysitting our grandkids for a week. So
Okay. Well,
so
that was really cool too, I bet.
yeah, so I need to figure the next one out. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Conflict style, hash it out or sleep on it.
Hash it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Team victory dance or quiet high five.
Team victory dance. Yeah.
Aw, yay. And then last, I think I kind of know this one, problem solving, research or intuition.
Research.
All right, good. Intuition does not always work for people. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you, Sheila. Tell us where everybody can find the book and you, because you have so much to deliver.
So The Marriage You Want is the latest book in the Bear Marriage books. So you can find me at bearmarriage.com. We have the Bear Marriage podcast every Thursday. And if you go to bearmarriage.com and click on books, all of our books are there. The Great Sex Rescue, She Deserves Better, all kinds of great things. And then the latest one, of course, is The Marriage You Want, which you can get anywhere that sells books, Amazon, Baker Books, anywhere. So yeah.
Thank you again. You are
Hmm.
amazing. Keep up the beautiful work and rest. Okay, guys, you heard the beautiful book, The Marriage You Want, Moving Beyond Stereotypes for a Relationship Built on Scripture, New Data, and Emotional Health. This is a book you do not want to miss out on. It's here in the show notes on pre-order. And also, just so you know, don't forget the Enneagram Relationship Intensive for those who just need some time with me to really dive into your unique issues. I am here for you. Cannot wait. This is the year of social. Having a great time with it. Okay, bye.